Welcome to the Roundtable with Indigenous People representative and allies as part of the How to Indigenous Governance and Diplomacy for the Now webinar series. I am Jocabed, soy Jocabed Solano. I will be your co-host for today. This webinar series is brought to you with the support of Tuomas Aslak, DOCIP, Drumbeat Media, and TV Indígena. And we could not do this without our amazing interpreter.
Are we all muted?
Thank you so much, the interpreter, for this important job. This episode is a virtual roundtable to build on the one-on-one conversation in the previous 5 episodes by representing through full informative taste and the state of indigenous diplomacy and governance today. If you haven't seen these previous episodes, go to YouTube and search for How to Indigenous Now, and you will find the full episodes and the one-on-one conversations. If you are participating in the Zoom or watching on the Facebook live stream, please let us know in the comment where you are watching from, es decir, desde dónde lo están viendo. For those that are watching on Zoom, the Q&A feature is active, meaning throughout the episode you can ask questions for our guests to answer. Welcome again, Ghazali.
Hey everyone, what's good? My name is Ghazali Ohorella, and we'll be your co-host number 2 of this webinar roundtable to share coming in to share some quick things with you. The webinar series will be, as always, will be recorded and repurposed for the Gomaluku podcast. Please engage with each other in the conversation through the chat or the comments. We're also live on Facebook, like Jocabed said. So please engage with each other in the comments and on Facebook as well. Let each other know what your answer would be to a specific question, any thoughts, or if you have heard a good quote. Please help us keep this conversation going on Twitter by using the hashtag #HowToIndigenousNow. And you can tag me, of course, or in your post at Gomaluku, or one of the amazing panelists, guests that we have in this roundtable as well, provided that they use Twitter, of course. And feel free to share any questions, screenshots or feedback. If you have joined us via Zoom, we have the amazing support of our interpreters in Spanish, French, and Russian. You can select the language of your choice below and make sure to put the original language on mute, of course. I already made that mistake in the practice session, so please do not make the same mistake that I made just now. Before we kick off the series, I would like to say thank you on behalf of the entire team to DOCIP and the interpreters for their amazing dedication, given that it is 10 p.m. for most of the interpreters at this point. For our guests today, of course, please speak at a normal pace. You're all very used to that. We're all very familiar with the United Nations setting at a normal pace so that our interpreters can follow, and also put yourself on mute when you're not talking. I'm joined today, myself and Jocabed are joined today by Aili Keskitalo, Pavel Sulyandziga, Dalee, Sambo, Dorough, Elsa, Stamatopoulou, Andrea, Carmen, Carson, Kiburo, Tuomas Aslak Juuso, and hopefully Kenneth and Lars Anders Bear will come in during the roundtable, of course. Of course, everyone, welcome back to the webinar series. Thank you so much for being on the one-on-one conversations. This is a roundtable, whole new concept, whole new format. We hope that you like it. So it's going to be a flow of ideas and probably also like questions from back and forth as well amongst the panel guests, as well as from us as co-hosts. So let me dive right into the first question. It's a very easy one. please finish this sentence. I do what I do because. Who would like to start? Aili, please.
Thank you, and Boris, Poreakit, Samis, good evening from Sámi. Well, I do what I do because we are a small people, and I cannot expect that anyone else should do it. So I think that is kind of the secret force of the Sámi, that we realize that we are not so many. We're a small people, and we cannot afford to wait for somebody else to do it for us. And I'm sorry to say we cannot also always trust the states we live in to do what is needed. So that is why I do what I do, because it's needed, and I'm here.
Thank you. Dalee, please.
Yeah. Ghazali, thank you for this episode and another round. I think that what Aili has stated is quite significant and is really a manifestation of our right of self-determination, right? Especially at the international level. And the question of this, or the premise and the title of this whole show of how to indigenize, how to be indigenous now, is really symbolic of what is necessary. But the second thing that I would say in terms of why I do what I do, why our organizations do what they do, is that it's imperative for future generations and the real opportunity for them to exercise and enjoy their fundamental human rights. And if we can take one small step forward in this generation, consistent with how Aili has characterized it, then the next generation's load will be a little lighter, hopefully. So that would be my response.
Thank you so much. I feel very uncomfortable prompting everyone, so please feel free to. Andrea?
You gave us just to finish a sentence, right? So I've been thinking of how to do that. I do what I do because I was born to do that. That's why I came here.
Because of course we'll dive deeper into all your contributions. Tuomas.
Well, thank you and good evening to all. I think Aili answered quite well, so putting pressure from my colleague, but maybe I will say it in another way. I do what I do because I serve the people, and the people have trusted me to do what I do.
Pavel, please. You're mute, Pavel.
Я извиняюсь. Спасибо всем большое. Я очень рад всех видеть. Очень рад сегодня с вами вместе быть. Я хотел бы закончить эту фразу таким образом, что я занимаюсь этим еще и, к сожалению, потому, да, вот я добавляю слово «к сожалению», потому что я сейчас вынужден находиться не на своей родине. Я думаю, что вы, наверное, знаете, что я вынужден был покинуть Россию из-за тех угроз, которые были для меня и, самое главное, для моей семьи. И я занимаюсь этим еще и потому, что, к сожалению, у нас на родине говорить правду становится очень опасным. И поэтому из-за этого многие представители коренных народов, хоть и продолжают свою борьбу, сложную, тяжелую борьбу, но они, к сожалению, не всегда могут говорить очень остро, очень открыто. И поэтому в определенной степени я сейчас занимаюсь именно потому, чтобы озвучивать как раз вот те чаяния и надежды, потому что я нахожусь в безопасности сегодня. Я могу это говорить прямо, открыто, без, не опасаясь за жизнь свою и своей семьи. Поэтому я занимаюсь этим еще и потому, не только, конечно же, да, но еще и потому, что это важно для наших сородичей в России, которые находятся, к сожалению, в условиях тоталитарного режима.
Thank you so much, Pavel, for your very honest and very vulnerable, putting yourself in a very vulnerable position, of course. Thank you so much for sharing that. Definitely going to dive deeper into experiences and also ideas as well. Elsa, can I ask you the same question?
Thank you very much. And first of all, I'm so happy to see everybody in these COVID times. It's wonderful to even use this medium and see each other. Well, I do what I do because I believe in what the Indigenous Peoples movement represents. And I think the world would be a very unhappy and unhospitable and unworthy place if only the Indigenous peoples by themselves fought for this and didn't have any solidarity by the non-Indigenous people. And so I'm one of those that is inspired by the Indigenous peoples. And also I believe what Willie Littlechild has said very often. He says, when Indigenous peoples are well, we are all well. So fighting with the Indigenous peoples, with them in the front seat, with their self-determination expressed, actually is good for the whole world. And I would like to be an ambassador of that.
Thank you so much. Carson, I do what I do because...
First of all, I want to apologize for my connection. I don't think it's really good as I expected. It's not as good as I expected. I do what I do because I was born to do it. And number two, I also do for my people because I'm just stepping in to bridge a gap. And it is the same as what our brother Tuomas has said. It's because of the power that the people have entrusted to me. And I do what I do because of those two reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Carson. Kenneth just walked in. Kenneth, we're doing like the first question is an easy one, but we're already getting some very profound, yeah, I want to say answers, but like the question is, if you could finish the sentence, I do what I do because, how would you finish that sentence, Kenneth?
Okay, well, thank you, Ghazali. By the way, sorry I'm late. Miscommunication on my end. I thought we were starting at 6 p.m. and I'm in the middle of cooking right now. So
I think, well, Kenneth, we can't hear you. So maybe you, we can't see you either though. So maybe it's something with your microphone as well as your camera. Oh, there you are.
There I am. I'm sitting on my back porch with my apron on because I'm cooking. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
We can hear me? All right. I think I told you that I was, I'm sitting on my back porch at this instant with my apron on because I'm cooking dinner because I thought we weren't going to start for another 2 hours. What do I do? Why do I do it? Because I was inspired by Indigenous people when I first went to Geneva in 1987. And I didn't go there.
Kenneth,
I didn't understand.
You're on mute.
No, I'm not. My microphone is on.
Kenneth, I can see and hear Kenneth myself.
My microphone is on, so I don't know why you can't hear me.
No, you're good, Kenneth.
Okay, all right. Okay. So anyway, when I first went, it's just as well, Andrea. I was inspired when I first went to Geneva in 1887, and Dalee Sambo was one of the people that were there, and I was there for the Indigenous Caucus, and then or what was called the Indigenous Peoples Preparatory Meeting for 1 week, and then the Working Group on Indigenous Populations, and then I saw the what was really happening out there, the early development of the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And all the at that time it was such a moment where Indigenous people are articulating their rights, articulating to the United Nations what we believe our rights are, and I was inspired by all the people that were there, and where the potential of what international work can achieve, and so I went back again in 88 and 89, and then again in 90, and it wasn't a plan. It just happened that way. And then, but I always found my way back to Geneva, and I felt that we had to carry out this whole idea that we have to get the United Nations to recognize Indigenous people as peoples with a right to self-determination, and all the rights that flow from that. And that was our struggle, and it's still our struggle today, even though the declaration was passed in 2007, and Article 3 says, Articles 1, 2, and 3 articulate that we are peoples and we have right self-determination. The struggle is still to have states recognize it and apply those rights, and so that's why the struggle continues, and that's why I keep going back. That's it for now.
I appreciate it, Kenneth. One burning question that I have at this point is, what are you cooking?
Oh, I'm cooking spaghetti sauce, and because I could cook it, then I can sit down and take part in this once it's done. But I thought it was at 6 o'clock our time. That's the message that I got. I didn't know it was at 4.
Oh, we changed it I think like a week ago.
Did we? I must have saw the old message then.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
But good to have you with us.
I'll shut off every now and again while I go and stir the sauce.
Sure. No, thank you. Thank you so much, Kenneth. So thank you everyone for explaining to us why you do what you do, because to a lot of Indigenous peoples it is often hard to describe or to articulate why they do what they do. And I think it is to hear from the leaders and allies actually why they do what they do. It can be as well as an opportunity for Indigenous people's representatives that are just starting out to articulate their intentions, their purpose for advocating for the rights of Indigenous peoples. There are the 3 pillar questions that we have for this roundtable. The first one is where is the movement? Where are we right now? What do you see? And obviously it is very important to, not just with COVID, but also with what we want as an aspirations. Where do you think that we should go as a movement, or as for the Inuit, or for the Yaqui, or for the Sámi, or the Udege, or the Endorois peoples? Where would you like to go, or your Indigenous peoples to go? And also maybe also very important is how do you want them to get there? It is what we see from the last five episodes is that people have an idea where they want to go. People that are watching the webinars, but what they really need is also with the questions that we're getting is, how do we get there? Please give us advice on a whole host of things. And I think yeah, maybe that's all. Also like Dalee, like you said, like the how to indigenous now, like how can I be as indigenous as possible during COVID, after COVID, how can I be strong about advocating for the rights of indigenous peoples in for the next post COVID, like when the UN quote unquote opens. So like there's so many questions. So that's why we changed the whole format to a roundtable, so that you can talk about experiences and ideas that you might have. So like let's throw the, it's a big question, of course, but like any aspect that you want to highlight would be very appreciated. Where do you think the indigenous peoples are right now? I'm setting it very broad so that you can like highlight a small part of it, or maybe in broad strokes, maybe about the movement or your own indigenous peoples. Where are you right now? Sorry, I think Dalee.
I know that Pavel unmuted, and that he looked as though he were ready to respond.
Oh, Pavel, please. I have Pavel, Dalee, and then Andrea.
Okay, спасибо большое.
Thank you. I think that the movement of indigenous people now at the international level is definitely on the uplift, which is very important for all of us. And I would like to discuss this question and then to cover the rest about Russia, the indigenous people movement in Russia. When I just started, when I was young, when our territory was to be sold to an international company, and it was the government who set the deal, I couldn't imagine, and I didn't even think about any other indigenous peoples. I didn't think about their rights, that they fight for them. I had no idea. And as I already told you last time at the roundtable, we managed to win the case, but it happens because we reunited with the locals of Far Eastern region, of Pozharsky region. The ecologists helped us. And when I just started in such a movement, I thought that I was the ecologist, because I couldn't imagine that there are people who fight for the indigenous people's rights, that they reunite in order to solve their own problems and issues. And this is why today, now, many indigenous peoples in all over the world, they are able, if they try to resolve their issues, they can ask the international movement of indigenous people. It is the international level. They can ask them to help, because this movement is very important. It has a voice, and this can really help. This is why the international movement of indigenous people can be heard. Their voice is clear. Sure, sometimes even internationally we still cannot stand our rights, but it's still, this voice cannot be shut. And this is very important, because we have to develop this fact. It took a very hard job to be the voice, to be heard. A lot of people take part in this conversation today, and I'm very grateful to everybody, Dalee, Elsa, and Andrea. They are all my friends and colleagues, Kenneth. Such people made a lot of effort, put a lot of effort. They did a very great job to create this base, and we have to develop this job, we have to continue it. Future generations have to take the lead and develop the movement. Talking about the indigenous peoples movement in Russia,
Well, today it's quite uneven because the situation in Russia is, well, we use the war terminology sometimes, and I think I have to use it even here. It's not even, it's not together, it's separated. We had a united movement, but we don't have it anymore. It's broken into little pieces, and we cannot see one united movement of indigenous peoples. Right now, there is only one part of the government that does more of a propaganda job than informational. The leaders of indigenous people in Russia still exist, and the voice of indigenous peoples of Russia still exists, and it's very important to make it heard. This is why we are working on it. We're working on this issue. We try to make people who speak the truth, who fight for the rights of their people, not with songs and dances that is shown in Russia today, but the real struggle for the resources, for the land, for the ability and right to live on their land, the right to create the self-governance. This is what we are fighting for. And these are the issues that we have to start working on from scratch. We have no previous base, previously created base. Even if we have some, it's not in a good condition. Next question is about how to create and how to resolve those issues. I think I will come back to it a little bit later. Thank you.
Again, thank you, Ghazali, for the question. I just wanted to make 4 comments in response to where we are right now. And it's Kenneth alluded to it earlier as far as the UN Declaration and its adoption in 2007, that we face so many implementation gaps that as well as the uneven treatment of the rights and the norms achieved in the UN Declaration. But a little footnote, and I think an important footnote to that is we cannot forget that we have the UN Declaration, that we have the ILO Convention, and that we have the American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And all 3 of those Indigenous specific instruments are linked together, not only in writing in the text of those instruments, even if your country hasn't ratified ILO Convention 169, the ILO itself has indicated that it is mutually complementary, mutually reinforcing and complementary to the UN Declaration. So we need to think about all of these instruments. The second thing is that I think that we need more Indigenous representatives at this growing collection of international fora. We don't have enough advocates and watchdogs. We need the next generation. We need those who are out there and on the ground, who are experts in diverse fields, to step up and engage. And I know that oftentimes people are dealing with the suicide of a family member, the death of someone due to COVID-19, the lack of housing in their village, the lack of running water in their community, and urgent day-to-day life threatening things. But at the same time, that work at the international level, if it's to mean something at the local level, we need more representatives, again, to be advocates and watchdogs, because every government is a boogeyman, and every government is out there seeking ways to diminish the rights that we achieved in these international instruments. The third thing is the undermining done by states, the diminishment of the rights achieved by states. And the best example right now is conflating the term local communities with Indigenous peoples. And we fought for decades to gain these indigenous specific norms represented in these three instruments, as well as other instruments, and the growing jurisprudence from the treaty bodies. But at the same time, we know that these linkages can have damaging effects to all of the achievements that we've made. And the final thing I'd like to say is that too bad that there's a segregation of issues, a siloing of issues, which has demanded that we need more representation. We need more indigenous warm bodies, at the table. This siloing effect of the issues is completely contrary to how we understand the world in terms of the interrelated, indivisible, and interconnected nature of our ways of life and our treatment of the issues. A good example of that is for us in the Arctic Council. They're happy to talk about environment and environmental protection, but oh no, we're not going to talk about defense and security issues. What? Okay, if you want to protect the environment, think about security and defense and militarization issues. So I'll just stop there in terms of where we are now and encourage those who are listening, who are Indigenous and who have a passion for safeguarding what you represent and your identity, to seek and find ways to get involved so that we can, again, take another step forward to diminishing the burden that we carry and the responsibilities that we have. Yeah.
Thank you, Dalee. Andrea?
Thank you, Ghazali, and thank you for organizing all of these conversations. I think it's very important. This is the second or third one that I've been on. We just finished like half an hour ago the first webinar in our new series, which is looking towards life after COVID. Specifically, what are we learning? What do we need to strengthen? What do we need to change or let go of? And we had three elder knowledge holders: Francois Paulette from Northern Canada, Hiniwirangi Kohu from Aotearoa, New Zealand, Myrna Cunningham from Atlantic coast of Nicaragua, and then Janine Yazi from Navajo Nation, who's very involved in the relief work there. And all of them talked about the profound assessment and planning that we need to do as Indigenous peoples to understand the wake-up call that what's going on now represents for Indigenous peoples globally, as well as communities like mine in Southern Arizona that is very hard hit. We just lost a knowledge holder from the Tohono O'odham Nation last week. Our Yaqui Nation board member of IITC, Mariano Ochoa, is still in critical condition in the hospital on the Mexico side in Ciudad Obregón, even though they say he's getting better and they didn't need to put him on a ventilator, thank goodness. But in a lot of our communities, there is an extreme level of crisis. Others have been more fortunate to not be yet directly affected, but they talked about prophecies. They talked about understanding spiritually and really being called on to look at that level, as well as a deep political analysis that doesn't just respond with the same ways that we have been doing things. This is a wake-up call and we need to listen to it. And that may be different, the message in our different nations or communities, but we're in the middle of the trauma here where I'm sitting. And as you all probably know, me along with 4 members of my family went through having COVID, which was very strange for me as someone who's, I always say I never get sick. But luckily, we didn't have to go in the hospital and, all of that. We used traditional medicine. And so my community here and the communities we're working with here, all the way from the Navajo or Dene Nation to our communities in Mexico and here in the Southern Arizona area, Yaqui and Tohono O'odham, are really focusing on one core response that starts, in your home, in your community, which is food sovereignty. And I appreciate what Dalee said, about not siloing these issues, because there's such a tie, to rights, extractive industries, right to health, both access to health care and our traditional medicines. Of course, looking at food sovereignty as well. So people are saying, okay, what do we need to do? For one thing, recognizing that all of us here on this call, this webinar, and we who are alive today are survivors of other pandemics, some of which were brought by colonizers inadvertently, and some of which were deliberately introduced into our communities. We know how to survive. Let's revive and pay some attention to that cellular knowledge that we have for survival, and start to look at the profound situation that we are facing. Of course, there's, you could say more superficial, but yet very important responses like communicating by webinar and those kinds of things. But, there are a lot of much deeper lessons that the natural world is telling us now. And the question is, how are we going to listen and implement those things? So I think this is what we're facing, and we have to face it, with courage and dignity, but also with listening to what the earth and our elders and our ancestral knowledge and our cellular knowledge, our genetic, what they call genetic heritage knowledge, is telling us right now. So thank you. I appreciate this chance to share those thoughts.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so
sorry, Ghazali, I'm just going to jump in here.
For me, because I am very young woman, and then, sorry, because my English is not really good, but I try to speak in English. Thank you for inspire us. I was thinking about how your experience is very important for many, many young people around Abya Yala, around the world. And then I was thinking about how it has been inspired and challenging to hear from you about your experience in the different international and local instances for the rights indigenous. But I have a question for anyone want to answer about how do you help people across from you at the table authentically find the mindset to understand the rights needs on indigenous people. I could say in Spanish, maybe it's easy for you to understand me, but I repeat again in English. How do you help people across from you at the table authentically find the mindset to understand the rights needs of indigenous people? This is a question for anyone want to answer, but maybe it's open the table for any answer, because I know many of indigenous youth people want to know more about that. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Hoka, for your question. I also saw that Aili also wanted to say something also like in relation to the previous question. So okay. Aili, if you please go ahead.
Ito, thank you very much. Sorry to jump in like this, but I wanted to respond but also to follow up on some of the things said by the other panelists, both Andrea and Dalee especially. Well, I would have to say that in the COVID-19 situation, since it was mentioned, it has affected Sami communities. But I think our luck in this is that living in rural communities, the social distancing part, it's easier for us than for those living in the cities. And that is maybe our only advantage when it comes to spreading of this pandemic. But besides the COVID-19 challenges, we have had quite a harsh winter and a spring, and that has affected one of our core livelihoods, reindeer herding, very much. So we have had a kind of a double crisis in our communities, and I'm sure Tuomas also would echo me on this, because this is a fact over all of Sápmi. But what I find kind of scary today is that this COVID-19 crisis, it's how it's being used by both governments and also by private industry to kind of advocate for industrial development and land grabbing in Sámi areas, but also I register it also in other indigenous areas, and that is very scary, because we have already the burden of handling the COVID-19 issues, but we also have the COVID-19 issue being used as to strengthen the threats against our livelihoods and our cultures. And so we have the double burden again, like we have when it comes to climate change. We have to deal with climate change, but we also have to deal with whatever bad ideas governments and companies put into place to mitigate the climate change. So this is not new, but it has gained power in this spring and winter, and it's I find it kind of scary. One more comment. Both Andrea and Dalee mentioned when our issues are separated, and we have to spread ourselves out quite thinly to kind of try to be where it's most important to be at whatever time, and of course it's a challenge for our manpower or woman power. We have to be everywhere at all times and follow all processes. But what I also find kind of challenging is that we meet different people, state representatives, NGOs, and so on, in all the different processes. So we don't only have to educate ourselves in the issues that are being tabled, but we also have to educate everyone else on our issues, and that is a big job. Thank you there.
Muchas gracias, Ali. Queremos también pedirle a Elsa, ella quería comentar, entonces tienes la palabra, queremos escucharte también a ti.
Yes, I would like to make a comment, 3 comments to the question that Ghazali raised, but also to what Joby raised, to link them, So the first comment is, where is the movement, So the movement has achieved. We have to recognize achievements and to also make the younger leaders understand those achievements. It has achieved norms, international norms, after lots of effort, and some institutions that are there for indigenous peoples, and that many other social and political causes do not have, and are trying to learn from the indigenous people. So this is number one, and it's very important to pass this on, to make it deeply understood for younger leadership, so that, for example, the declaration becomes really a living document, as we say. It has to be continuously used, okay? So the other point is that we have these challenges, bigger challenges, like, for example, what the corporations are doing now maybe 40 years ago was not as obvious as it is now for indigenous peoples. And now, of course, the COVID that unveils all this. So, but there is a third opening I want to throw out there, to put on the table, that I see. And it is manifested through this effort of indigenous peoples for better and fuller representation. So it is an external expression of self-determination at the international level. That is one, which opens new possibilities. But second is also how indigenous peoples are more and more sharing with the world how they actually manifest, how they actually carry out their own self-determination. And we see that because in the various UN bodies and the work, for example, of the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples on self-determination, how these examples are coming out. And I was very impressed, and I know, Ghazali, you tried to bring one of the brothers from the One Piece. I don't know if you achieved that, but I was reading, for example, the One Piece have a very good example of self-determined governance. And they were saying, we are opening our forest as a hospital for people suffering from COVID. It was, an incredible expression of both traditional knowledge, self-determination, solidarity, just in one statement like that. So I personally see that the movement is really pushing upwards new visions of own expressions of self-determination, how people are just doing, not just expecting from the state. This is the difference from previous periods. I see that indigenous peoples don't just express vis-a-vis the state, but how they themselves do things and envision the world. And that's very, this inspires, and it creates optimism, I think.
Muchas gracias, Elsa.
Sorry,
todo el
Hoka,
tema que has hablado
you
sobre
go
la
ahead.
autodeterminación. Creo que es necesario para seguir pensándolo y también tomándolo en cuenta para las juventudes que están escuchando, tanto en Zoom como en Facebook. Hay hermanos y hermanas que están muy atentos y atentas. Pero Tomás también quería comentar y queremos escuchar qué tiene que decirnos Tomás. Estamos emocionados en poder también escucharle a él.
Thank you. And answering to the question of kind of state of the movement, where we are and what is happening right now, I think that's a big question. You could answer it in many different ways, but I think that one of the important issues is to note that I think that there is a great momentum for indigenous people to push for better and stronger implementation of rights in all of the different forests. I fully agree with the view that we have many different forums where we are currently participating and also a bit dividing ourselves. But I think that is the reality of what we are now facing. We do have to keep the level of engagement strong. And I think that is something that we have been touching a bit in the movement, but still lacking maybe good ways how to enforce our participations. We have, and I think coming from my perspective, I am an advocate from the so-called third generation of advocacies, indigenous advocacies. And I do see though that there isn't that much of people's, younger people's currently participating, committing to this work. Now, there are of course a number of reasons. There are different kind of situations in the world. In some parts of the world, indigenous peoples are not even recognized. I'm coming from a region where the recognition isn't a big problem, but you know, there is challenges with that also here in Sámi areas, especially on the Finnish side. But how do we build the know-how in the generation advocacies? How do we jointly share the opportunities to participate and build experiences on advocacy, to support the steps on for a younger generation? Or I'm not speaking only on the younger generation, but for those that are willing to commit to the work and that they are already experiences that could be transformed for the second or third generation peoples that are coming in. I think that the one of the challenges that what we haven't been able to tackle is how to carry the responsibility, how to take the role of being a representative, not just a youth participant or younger participant. And there, I think that it's important to understand that we need some strength in the youth. There needs to be consistency participating, but also the support from the not going to say older generation, but the generation that have more experience to be able to carry their responsibility. I think I'm one of those examples. Maybe many of you have known me for some times now, and I think I'm one of those examples where my region has kind of taken care of me in sense that I've been step by step taking forward and push the experience and kind of give them the responsibility to build more responsibilities, and that way come as a representative for people, for a region. And I don't see that much happening currently, or not enough, especially with the comment made that there are so many forums where we need to be. We have a lot of people currently going to the climate forums or the traditional knowledge, the biological conventional biological diversity. But I have some examples where in the human rights aspect of the indigenous rights, we have only 3 or 4 representatives present in the Human Rights Council sessions, where, for example, annual indigenous resolutions are negotiated. Of course, it's difficult to come there. Of course, it's expensive. It's not easy to go there. But I think our movement is capable of doing a little bit better. And when we are going to the momentum, we have some good decisions made in the United Nations. The World Conference process built some strong opportunities for us to push the national implementation on our rights, but also the international participatory rights that we are currently trying to push also. But it needs also a certain kind of nature of representation from our movement. So strengthening the representative natures and nature of our peoples, I think it's important. I think some parliaments are one kind of example where you can see that the parliaments have been developed by time to represent the people, but they are invented institutions. They have done through legislation of the national situations like Finland, Norway, and Sweden. So there are innovative ways how we can try to build those momentums, and I think that is important. I think that is where the movement is right now. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Tomás. Quizás Kenneth ya tiene lista la comida, pero queríamos escuchar también qué opina Kenneth sobre esta pregunta que Ghazali ha planteado. ¿Sí se escucha?
Are you, who you're talking to?
A Kenneth, queremos escuchar qué puede compartirnos Kenneth sobre la pregunta planteada.
All right. Okay, thank you. By the way, my spaghetti sauce is coming out great. First of all, I want to thank everybody for their comments and about the history of Indigenous people and how we progressed in the UN system, and how that we're all, Indigenous issues are everywhere in the system, and it's true we have a hard time getting Indigenous people to all these venues, more Indigenous people to all these venues, and that's very, very important. And we've come a long way. Now I just want to though express my concerns, my deep concerns about the future. And I think I've expressed this before, but I'll express it again. There are three things that concern me right now, and it's all about the pushback that we're getting from states against Indigenous peoples, and we have to do something about that. One of them is the fact that the Secretary General, the current Secretary General, has not come to any Indigenous events, in the permanent forum or the launch of the year or the close of the year of Indigenous languages. And he has been basically invisible to us, which is different from the previous Secretary General. And I don't know if that's a coincidence, but if I link it to all the other things, then I'm very suspicious of that. Maybe he may be deliberately staying away. The second one is how the membership of the permanent forum was decimated by the Economic and Social Council, where they moved. We have 12 brand new members of the permanent forum out of 16, and it wasn't necessary to change 12 people. There were many Indigenous representatives on the permanent forum that only served one term, and that were very capable people that could have served a second term, but they were removed, and the weakness of the membership of the membership of the permanent forum in the resolution is now very obvious, and we knew it was there when it was created. We left it to the good faith of states to be fair and honest and to try to get the best people on the permanent forum. But I think we were betrayed by states in the last selection process. And I'm concerned about that, and I'm concerned about that continuing, that maybe in the next round, we might get 16 new people on the permanent forum. And that's not good for the continuing work of the permanent forum. The third issue is the creation of the group of friends. We've had the support of states called the group of friends that have been supporting us to the World Conference issue, and currently they're supporting us on the enhanced participation of Indigenous peoples in the UN. But now the states that are against our rights or pushing back have organized themselves, calling themselves the like-minded states. And this, to me, is a very, very unfortunate development. So now, while in states that have been fought against us, like Russia, India, just to name a few, Pakistan, Bangladesh, they were always in the background or individually fighting against us. but now they're organized into this thing called the like-minded group of states. And I think that's a dangerous development. And when you link those three things together, the organization of the like-minded states, the ECOSOC, or at least taking away some of the best and most experienced Indigenous people off of the permanent forum, and the Secretary General not addressing Indigenous people directly, you link all those three things together. And I suspect that there is a large coordinated pushback for Indigenous people in the UN system, particularly in New York. And so I'm concerned. I think the creation of the like-minded states who are there to push back against a group of friends, I think that's not going to go away soon. I think that may be a permanent structure, and that is concerning. And we have to find a way to combat that. Because that's going to have to change our approach to how we deal with rights in the UN system, which could spread to Geneva as well, and maybe other places. To combat that, I think that now it comes apparent that Indigenous peoples, not only do we have to have more people active, but we may need a permanent office in New York to be active, to combat, and to be present, and to be visible, to fight for whatever we need to be done in the United Nations in New York, and maybe we may have to do that in Geneva. It's something that we've always wanted, mind you. I'm not saying it's not a new idea, but now it's become urgent. We just can't show up for the permanent forum and expect everything will be fine for the rest of the other 11 months. It's not going to be that. It's not that way anymore. I think that the Indigenous peoples have to look seriously at trying to find the resources to have a permanent presence in New York and Geneva on into the future. And that's a good thing in the sense that it's part of our development, and it's a way to use our experience in a different and constructive way. And it's also a good training ground for people to learn, just like the fellows in the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Geneva, where you have these fellows that go to Geneva for 3 or 6 months, and we may need that kind of things to be used to help put personnel in an office in New York and Geneva. So I think that's where Indigenous organization in the future is going to have to head. Thank you.
Gracias, Kenneth. Si nos dejas pensando con lo que estás comentando. Después de Kenneth queremos escuchar a Carson, y después de Carson, Andrea, que ha levantado la mano. Entonces queremos escuchar a Carson, nuestro hermano, que dicen también los jóvenes sobre este tema.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Jocabed and Ghazali, for organizing all this together with Tuomas and Rambit Media. So where are we as an Indigenous movement? First of all, the Indigenous Peoples movement has grown tremendously, and I'm relatively young in this global movement. Well, in my community, I've been around for some time, but I have read and I've been taught well. Grateful to all my teachers in this movement who are here today. I have Andrea, Elsa, of course, Ghazali. So many of my fellow panelists have raised this issue of intergenerational knowledge transfer. And I'm so happy that even Tuomas talked about strengthening the younger generation and how do we move forward. Also, Elsa mentioned that from this space, the Indigenous Peoples movement, we now have thematic engagements, collectively relations help in utilizing several sectors with limited overlaps, of course, that have been mentioned before. From climate action, biodiversity, agriculture, gender, etc. And the intersectionality in all these is, I put down my notes here. So the intersectionality in our traditional knowledge, strengthened by the cross-cutting nature of sustainable development goals. And I'm really glad to have someone like Kenneth here mentioning the gaps that we see within the United Nations. And as a young person, I have come to experience the United Nations in my entire global engagements. It was a baptism by fire. And last year was when I really saw the power of how member states manipulate the UN system to make it weak to make a weak system for us to engage in. And it's not easy, especially at the GA. And some of our people have been mentioning that, that is some of our leaders in the indigenous rights movements have been mentioning that, shall we have our own General Assembly within the UN? Or even outside the UN? That is a question for another day. And one more thing that I would like to shine a light on is, for instance, at the UN, many of its agencies now have Indigenous Peoples Division. That's a good sign. But then, are they doing it because they feel like they need to come to us? Or is it because of how, did we push them? So that is also a question that, because that is right where we are right now as youth. We get invited to engage within these spaces, and we're really grateful. But again, we're asking ourselves, is this meaningful, or is it a way? Is it a checkbox? Like, oh yeah, we have the youth; they're here as well. So it is something that has been bothering me as well, because when it is structured so much, and it wasn't like, for example, if it's a program that it's been developed and we were not involved from the beginning, and we just come in, so you get to ask yourself such kind of questions. And but the most important thing right now, as it has always been, is to link the people on the ground, our people from the grassroots, and make it sustainable to grow socioeconomically. That is, to me, it's very important, because as we started in this talk today, the key word is the power that we get as leaders here. For my case as a young leader, is that power. The reason why I am here is because of our people. And I will never forget that. And that is the power that I'm talking about. Let's give back and always try to empower these people, even as we fight some other great enemy, great forces that we talk about even right now. It's always important that we link up with the ground, because that is where we get our inspiration. We get to be empowered when we attend our ceremonies, when we get when we pray with our elders. We get empowered and we instill more power to us. So I'll stop there before we get to the next question. Thank you, Jocabed.
Gracias, Carson. Pero antes de pasar a una pregunta que están compartiendo en los chats, vamos a escuchar a Andrea. Ella quería comentar también algo.
Thank you. I just wanted to briefly add another concern onto Kenneth's list. I think the organized opposition of states is something fairly new, where they have like an identity and a group, and I think they're much better organized than what we call the group of friends on different issues. But also there is a growing tendency that we have to recognize actually for the role of corporations in the UN system. And just one example that we've been dealing with directly is next year, the planning for a World Food Summit by the United Nations, and especially issues around COVID. One of the primary themes of the high-level plenary meeting this time was SDG 2, which is one of the only 2 places Indigenous peoples are actually mentioned in the goals around, sustainability and reducing hunger is the goal. But the World Food Summit, it had turned out, I guess, that the FAO Secretary General and the UN General Assembly had made an agreement for co-sponsorship with the World Economic Forum before the UN Committee on Food Security, Civil Society, Indigenous Peoples Mechanism, the International Planning Committee of small-scale food producers that works directly with FAO had even been informed. It was just announced. And there is a chance that we will have an Indigenous person on this planning committee to, help us push back on this. But I just wanted to throw that out as one other example of not just the negative state organization for opposition, but actually corporate involvement in UN bodies. I mean, that is the business sector of the major groups, and pushing really quite horrible technological strategies, I guess you could say, for food security, when we're being shown through COVID that the industrial model for food production and food distribution is, very fragile and weak, and we need to go back to relying on Indigenous peoples and the small scale food producers, if we're going to survive. Again, that was what I was talking about at the beginning, but I just wanted to throw that into the mix. So Kenneth will have even more to worry about. And as one example, I mean, we're talking food here. We're talking about something everybody needs, something that's a human right to subsistence, right to food security, and we would say food sovereignty. But something that has really been highlighted even more, during the COVID epidemic. And here it is, already looking at corporate models that don't work and violate rights as well, our rights. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you. Not to always have bad news, but we just were talking about this yesterday with Myrna Cunningham, who was considering being the Indigenous spokesperson or participant on this planning committee. Saul Vicente and I filled her in on some of this background that I'm letting you know, and some of the statements in opposition that have already been written from like the International Planning Committee on Food Sovereignty and others that include Indigenous peoples. And we'll see what happens. She's considering that role, and she's going to ask for champions, for the different themes. And, we'll certainly, put that out there in the world if that does happen. But this is a done deal, this partnership with the World Economic Forum. So it's just the question of what are we going to do now? There's of course discussion on a parallel summit, an Indigenous, a people's food summit. But then, how do we impact the actual policies that are being made if we do those kinds of things? It's always good to talk to each other, but then how do we impact the bigger process if we just do that? And I just wanted to mention that because food is really a core issue, not just for COVID, but for climate change, extractive industries, all such things. So just mentioning. Thank you.
Gracias, Andrea, por compartir todo esto y también por decirnos dónde tenemos que tener cuidado y estar atentos y alertas, porque todo esto es un proceso y nos involucra a todos. Pero antes de pasar al segundo momento, queremos también decir algunos comentarios y una pregunta que hace nuestra hermana Atina Y ella pregunta, lo voy a leer en inglés, como ella lo escribió, y la pregunta y su comentario es el siguiente. The UN definition of self-determination, as we understand, is all people have the rights of self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. Well, so my question, what is the true essence of the right to self-determination for indigenous people? How realistic, and I don't know how you pronounce that word, achievable has it been for indigenous people? Any good example to showcase? If you want to some example for these questions.
Thank you for the question, and I think that we would be surprised if we had more information about what is happening in a decentralized way within Indigenous communities. We, as Elsa said, we need to acknowledge the accomplishments that have been made. And so in various different regions, and this is not to say that, we're charging ahead and, really enjoying and exercising rights. I'm not saying that at all, but that there are a growing number of examples where Indigenous peoples themselves, through their own political enterprises, are exercising autonomy and self-government in ways that we're not even aware of. And I say this in part because of the gathering that was held in Mexico City. I can't remember exactly when now, where the focus of the discussion, it was hosted by Government of Mexico, International Work Group on Indigenous Affairs, and a couple of other institutions, where the focus was autonomy and self-government as an element of the right of self-determination. And we all know the substance of Article 3 and Article 4 of the UN Declaration. But that there were a surprising number of examples, positive examples that have emerged throughout Latin America. Certainly in the Arctic region, we can point to examples, and this is not even including Greenland and the dialogue and the debate and their particular political enterprise in terms of potential for full independence, consistent with international law and the understanding of the right of self-determination. So I think that for some of the examples, the volume that's going to come out that emerged out of that particular Mexico City dialogue and discussion about autonomy and self-government may be insightful for all of us. In addition, I think if we begin to study more carefully some of the initiatives of, again, Indigenous peoples themselves wrangling with this issue, we would find numerous examples in this huge dark cloud of mostly bad news. So I think that that cross-fertilization that can take place at the international level is one important opportunity, like the side events that take place at the Permanent Forum, the preparatory meetings that Kenneth made reference to that took place in the early days in preparation for the Working Group on Indigenous Peoples and the normative standard setting at the UN, as well as the ILO and elsewhere. That these are all places to allow that cross-fertilization to emerge and happen. But Tuomas mentioned something really important, and Carson as well, that where are those avenues for young people to gain access, and where is there a depository that really in a comprehensive fashion provides clear examples. We have the benefit of the jurisprudence and compilation that the Forest Peoples Program puts together in terms of developments at the international level, but clearly there are others out there. It's just difficult to have a clearinghouse that is universal and easily accessible, especially for people in rural and remote communities that don't have broadband width, that can't access this information, which is another thing that's been revealed by the pandemic, that everyone assumes that we can all jump on Zoom when that's not actually the case for a lot of Indigenous communities. So I'll just stop there and suggest really that there are numerous examples out there. We just have to kind of wade through a lot of negativity to find the positive examples. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Dalee. Es toda una tarea buscar y seguir encontrando la esperanza y también ver todas las acciones positivas que se hacen también desde nuestras comunidades y desde las acciones concretas que se están tomando. También queremos hacer la pregunta que hace Tarsila Rivera, sí, y la pregunta es la siguiente. Could you say something about the implementation of our rights and domestic level? How can we go ahead? We want to hear Pavel. We want to learn about his wisdom about this question. I don't know if I am pronounced good your name, Pavel.
Спасибо большое. Я хотел бы ответить на предыдущий вопрос, на который...
Thank you. I would like to answer the previous question that Dalee answered already. I think that Russia is quite lucky because when we started working on fighting for our rights, we had real life examples that we used to study on. There are no perfect role models, no perfect systems, but there are situations that show us either accomplishment and success and an ability to exercise the rights. But I think it's a gradual work. It cannot, nothing cannot be changed by night. Everything is done step by step. And for us, when we first started fighting for the rights, we used to look upon the Sámi and Inuit. I think that, and I know that, there are a lot of problems and issues we're discussing here. The leaders of Sámi and Inuit people, but they have done a tremendous way forward, and they have a lot of achievements that we can look up to. Unfortunately, we didn't have such experience, and it is kind of a roadmap that we have to move through. We have our own issues, we have our own Russian problems. But a little bit later, we started to study the Maori experience that have been fighting for a really long time, and they did succeed. For 2 months, I traveled and studied the systems of American indigenous people who lived in reservations. And there are a lot of examples. These systems are not universal. They might not suit everybody. They're not perfect for everybody, but it's still an example. It's the perfect experience to look up to and to analyze and to admit and evaluate it. I think that it is not possible to judge whether there is any achievement on fighting for indigenous people's rights. There are a few fields that still lack the implementation of rights. First, it's government. There might be certain leaders, but the question still remains whether they are real representatives. Another issue is the resources and the lands that sometimes are not governed by the indigenous people. I think these are the criteria that can help us to understand whether the example was successful or not. If we don't have one of those criteria fulfilled, accomplished, then the question of self-determination might not be answered in a positive way. I think these are the ways to determine whether we're working in a good way or we should change our direction. There is a lot of examples of self-determination and self-governance. There sure is a lot of examples, and we have to learn from them. And I would like to highlight that for the Indigenous Peoples movement in Russia, when it first started, we didn't have any experience, so we relied on this Sámi people's experience. When I lived back in USSR and I was just chosen to lead my community, Udege community, I had no idea about anything that I had to do. And the ecologist sent me the book, the English book, about Canada and the rights of Indigenous peoples living in the territory of Canada. And I had a teacher of English that helped me to translate this book, this document, and we would read it and understand it and find something useful for us, for our movement. And this story had a continuation. It developed when in early 2000s I visited Canada and I visited the reservations. I had a meeting with Fred Shaw and he started telling the story about certain people from Russia that addressed him. Those people, they asked him to send the book and he didn't even know where did he send the book. And it turns out that it was the same book that we translated. And it's an incredible example of why we need to exchange the knowledge. Because their experience assisted us when we first started fighting the rights, fighting for the rights. This is why we have to communicate and share our experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if I may, sorry, I don't want to jump in your flow, but thank you so much, Pavel. I'm very conscious that we're coming like we have 30 more minutes, and there's some questions coming in. So I'll just limit to 2, and then Elsa has 2 questions as well. So hopefully we can do some quote unquote rapid fire of questions so that yeah, we can provide more value to people that are watching right now. So of course, like Jocabed already said, one question that came in from Tarsila, could you say something about the implementation of our rights at the domestic level, and how can we go ahead? Pavel already alluded to that a little bit. I'm sure that people like, I see Kenneth wants to say something about it, and Tuomas as well. And another question from somebody that prefers to remain anonymous. What are challenges facing the various representative institutions with respect to inclusion and effective participation of Indigenous peoples in decision-making processes, so as to strengthen the legitimacy of representation? So those are the two questions that came in. I would like to now give the floor to Elsa. You have some questions as well.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to follow up on the pushback that Kenneth put forward, and also what Aili was saying about corporations, the new challenges that we're facing, and also what Carson said, should we have a General Assembly of Indigenous Peoples themselves? Because the question that comes out of this for me is, how can Indigenous peoples organize strategically at a higher level? Because the demands are higher, because Indigenous peoples have raised already the profile so high that the demands are higher on the movement to respond to that. So it needs a strategy. But also, I want to say, falling back on the experience, these were questions of strategy that the movement was dealing with before. I remember especially the months before the adoption of the declaration, and other times, of course, when Dalee and other people were in New York very actively. And what can we learn from these examples? In other words, my question is, how can we strategize? Can Indigenous people strategize? Meaning, where is the time? What are the facilitations that need to be there for Indigenous peoples to strategize at that level? And to come to Tarsila's, for example, how could questions like Tarsila's, strategic questions that have to do with the internal situation of a specific country, how can a question like that be responded and assisted and supported by all this experience that we have, that the movement has? So the how is very important. How, where, in what venue, what time of the year? I will stop here.
Thank you so much, Elsa. I see Kenneth. Hopefully he has finished his sauce yet, and then Tuomas.
Yes, the sauce is finished, and I'm in a hurry to eat it. So let's get going here. Just to respond to Tarsila, and I think Pavel also mentioned it. But here in Canada, in the country of Canada, there was a piece of legislation that would implement the Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People as part of Canadian law. And although it was passed in Parliament in the last session, when it went to the Senate for ratification, it died in the Senate because the opposition parties used procedure, and they ran out the clock, so that the legislation died on the table. So now now with another session coming up, we're doing it again. We're trying to get another piece of legislation. We're just negotiating that now, and that we hope to get that through Parliament, which we think we will again, and then we'll see what happens in the Senate the next time. But at least for Canada, we have a chance of getting the declaration as part of law in Canada, and implementation. How it's going to be implemented, and of course that's another battle. But the first battle right now is the government to recognize that they have to implement the declaration. The pushback comes from the issue of pre-part informed consent, which seems to be the big issue. The whole idea that Indigenous people will have a veto on development is the big concern of the opposition parties. So I'm just going to keep that short for now. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. Tuomas?
Thank you, and thank you. There are many good questions, but mainly maybe Tarsila's question is something that I wanted to touch upon. When talking about national implementation, it's of course always a question of realities, what kind of country, what kind of realities they are. But I think, and I strongly believe that strengthening and your coordinated efforts to push the issues with a wide range to go forward is the way to go, and trying to open it more forward and more like broaden it. I think it's important that when you are working together with your people, I think it's important to strengthen the nature of representation, so that you speak on behalf of the people. Try to find common positions with others, and I'm not saying that institutionalize, but somehow build those groups or voices collectively, because it's always more challenging for the member states to challenge those. As united as you can be on a national level among your own people, it is an opportunity to be successful. I think that is and has been one of the successes, how in the Arctic among Inuits or the Sámis, we've been able to push some issues forward. Also working in the field of different levels of administration, working within your own people, working within the regional level where you are located, the national level, but the international level also. I think that the international level is the way how you can push the issue to be fronted from a different aspect if the reality politics and the understanding of the government to your issue is not open there. And commitments in human rights, commitments to self-determination are the important elements. Using the tools that you have, the human rights commitments, a lot of states have made legally binding commitments. We do use the declaration a lot. It's a good tool. We have national implementation commitments from all of the countries. There were only few in the World Conference process that made reservations to the national implementation. So there is a commitment, there is at least a political commitment to implement the declaration on the national level. Now, reminding that to the states is crucial. I think that even in my own parliament, we are still lacking understanding on the strength and the opportunities of this commitment. And it's already 6 years from the commitment made in the General Assembly, and using it that strategically, thinking with your people, with a group of people, and building a strategy, coordinated efforts. I think that is way that I am trying to push in my areas and in my parliament where I'm in the position and given the responsibility to lead. Thank you.
If I could just quickly say that Tuomas has hit on something really important here, and that is those commitments and those obligations. And I just wanted to offer the big fat footnote that since the adoption of the UN Declaration by the General Assembly in 2007, the General Assembly in various resolutions, including those that are Indigenous specific, have all reaffirmed their commitment to the UN Declaration in no less than 11 additional resolutions. And so we weren't there compelling them necessarily to do that, right? I mean, Tuomas said earlier that even in terms of the human rights portfolio, there's so few people able to attend these meetings. the states, the UN member states have done this themselves, you know, and they may have done it unknowingly, but it's significant when you grab onto that and squeeze it really hard, right? that you can get some movement out of it by persistent and chronic reminders about these legal obligations. And the only other thing I wanted to say was that the work of the International Law Association and the Committee on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and now the upcoming conclusion of the Second International Law Association Committee on implementation of the rights of Indigenous Peoples, are useful resources, and that if we move forward with a specific episode on this program about autonomy and self-government, that those kinds of resources and access to them can be shared. And maybe people are reading the chat at the same time. I know it's really hard to do 3 or 4 different tasks when you're engaged like this, but there those kinds of opportunities to share written materials and information would be really, really useful and responsive to the points made by Tuomas, by Carson, and others. So I'll yield there, and again, just so appreciative of this format that you guys have developed, and the opportunity for us from far-flung places to engage and share.
Thank you so much, Dalee. If I may add to it, that I very like the idea because of having a very dedicated conversation about autonomy, self-governance, because that's what I'm sensing already not only in this conversation, but throughout the first 5 episodes, as well as the questions that are coming in, that people are very much interested in how to exercise the right to self-determination as a peoples, as in terms of self-governance. So there's a lot of how should I say it? People are hungry, as in like really wanted to know like how can we build our indigenous peoples as a government and be more self-determined. So I think that already is something that as a very good outcome of this webinar series, that a conversation is happening around self-determination and self-governance and autonomy. Very conscious that we're coming into like the final 14, 12 minutes. Is there anything that we did not touch upon, but you do think that we should be having, that you really wanted to bring this forward at this point? Did we miss on anything? I know I love the flow. I love the contributions of everyone. I really appreciate it, for everyone's commitment and everyone's thoughts. I see Kenneth probably already had his sauce. Hope you liked it.
Thanks, Ghazali. It's delicious, but I haven't had any yet. I just want to comment on some of the questions I think that came in about Indigenous representation and governance. And I just want to see that what a challenge that is. The participation of Indigenous people at the United Nations has been very open, wide open. As you know, the Working Group on Indigenous Populations was the first body in the United Nations that allowed people to participate without having NGO status. You didn't have to be a registered NGO to participate, and that has been that was a really, really good thing, and it's going on, and it continues today with the Permanent Forum and so many other bodies in the United Nations. And so the Indigenous movement included everybody: Indigenous governments, Indigenous organizations, lawyers, individual lawyers, universities, youth caucuses, all kinds of different bodies to get us where we are and participating where we are. However, the next step like enhanced participation of Indigenous peoples it's focusing right now on Indigenous governing institutions, and that takes discipline by Indigenous people too, and it has to shift from from this wide open door of anybody participating to a point where now, if you want to have enhanced participation, you got to actually have a constituency. You got to be a government. You got to represent. You got to represent. Have a structure to represent the people that you say you represent. And I think that's of course, all Indigenous people have their own governments, and I think it's now that step towards it. It's my dog. That step of becoming Indigenous governments, which is really the step when somebody mentioned an Indigenous United Nations, because any kind of a body like that, it would involve Indigenous governments being organized at the international level. And to be organized at the international level, you got to be organized at the local level, and you got to have the ability to participate at the international level. So that's a development issue. Some people can do it, and some people just have to learn how to do that. Thanks.
Tuomas, please.
I think Kenneth touched a really important issue. Well, some of us have been trying to say it also. Elsa had also a question that, like, how do we coordinate ourselves? These times are a little bit different. We have also opportunities. I think the enhanced participation process is really an important process, but also a kind of a way of thinking, how do we coordinate ourselves? We do have now the traditional indigenous coordination body that has the global aspect on it. You have representatives from all of the 7 regions, but how do you coordinate it? Like, how do you coordinate efforts outside of that group to regions so that you bring and build this strength? I'm quite certain that not that many of Indigenous peoples know who are their regions representatives in that specific process. Yeah. And I think that is a challenge. I think that our communications with all of the opportunities that we have now haven't been utilized in a good way. It's a question of resources, not only monetary resources, but resources and capacities. How do we know to use these platforms that we have? How do we get the knowledge to people that there are these platforms where the information can be shared? I think that has been one of the biggest challenges that I have been thinking in the enhanced participation process, that where we have institutions that have been engaging heavily to this process from the beginning, but we still lack the bigger movement behind it, and the knowledge and the information is stuck among the group of institutions that are engaging in this, and pushing that for a wider people is also a question and answer to the question that was raised about the accessibility and how people can participate to this work. Also, it needs commitment, point blankly commitment. You have to participate. You have to take the thinking that this is a 10-year process. This is a 15-year process. I think that there are a lot of youth, a lot of younger people that have been engaging with enthusiasm to Permanent Forum, to the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus. But I think that the regions and the institutions are a little bit missing the opportunities to grab those individuals. I've been chairing the Global Caucus for a long time, and when I was still young and the young youth movement, but I did see that a lot of talented people were kind of transformed away from the movement. Some of them are now in other kind of works, but not kind of committed or kind of pushed to the movement, and that is a challenge, and that is a real challenge. So So tying these all together, I was maybe messy with my answers, but I think that is, and these aspects are really important.
Thank you so much, Tuomas. I saw Andrea raise her hand. So Andrea.
Thank you. I'm not going to present any answers here, but just raise the issue that the question of representation has always been a challenging one since the very beginning. Because the way the caucus is always set up, even, you know, taking the floor in a lot of bodies, some of the peoples are bona fide representatives of their nations, of peoples, of collectives of peoples and nations, and others might just be an individual, you know, and it's been difficult to challenge that. And I think that's one of the issues that we're having with the enhanced participation, as well as the very legitimate differences of recognition of Indigenous peoples within countries, within states and regions. That reality has, I think, been in a way an obstacle in the way we've been addressing and been able to address these issues. And certainly, you know, the negative states have taken full advantage of some of those regional differences. But, you know, I just want to mention, you know, that the issue of representation, for example, you know, within my own organization, which is a very, very large network, multi-regional, but not of individuals, of nations, peoples, organizations, networks, etc. The Confederacy, the treaties 1 through 11 in Canada have one seat on the board of directors of Treaty Council and represent over 270 distinct governments, federally recognized governments in Canada. For example, you know, other regions and countries do things differently in terms of representation. But within the IATC, for example, we have federally recognized tribal governments that are affiliates and also sit on the board. We also have treaty councils that don't consider those to be the legitimate holder of treaty rights and nationhood within their people. Somehow we always seem to get along and be able to work together. But I think that's just one example from North America where Indigenous peoples are, you know, to some extent recognized, you know, as nations and governments. So I just would like to raise this. I think this issue is something we need to keep talking about, respecting the right to self-determination and respecting the regional differences as well that exist. So I just wanted to mention that some Indigenous nation governments are in exile, like Ghazali's, for example, you know, and get criticized by others from the Pacific because they're, you know, they're not in the Pacific. They, you know, are in exile. So I think this is an interesting issue. I think we need to keep talking more about it without stepping on toes or challenging other people's right to self-determination. It has been a stumbling block throughout the whole time I've been going to the UN. And it's one that we don't usually talk about because we don't want to challenge anyone else. And, you know, so I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you. For next time, another topic.
Definitely, like it is hard because we're coming to the top of the hour and it's about to get interesting. This entire conversation. But hopefully we have 2 more episodes to go. So hopefully we can continue that conversation. I would like to give you each and every one of you like a max 1 minute opportunity to do any final remarks, at least for this episode, before we close this. Hoka and I close this webinar. Who would like to go first? Pavel, yes, please.
Thank you, Ghazali. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to Ghazali, to Tuomas, to everyone, to all my colleagues for the opportunity to have this communication, for the opportunity to be able to hear, to listen to the experience of other people. And I'd like to point out that there is an issue that we could discuss in the future, Ghazali. This is the issue that is related to private business and indigenous peoples. I think in many regions of the world, this is a serious issue. In Russia, it is becoming a dramatic issue. We have had an imprisoned person, Sergei Kivrov. He is the representative of the indigenous people. And we also have another representative of the indigenous peoples who also is now being sued by the company that is digging gold. And I think that in the chat, I've just tried to spread the information on the work of the indigenous peoples of Russia, who it is related to Elon Musk and the company that's the nickel company is now causing the ecological damage to Russian lands and to the lands of indigenous peoples. And these issues related to business, to indigenous peoples, how should we work on the strategies of working together? I think that for other communities, it would be a very interesting issue to discuss. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pavel. I've written it down. Private businesses and indigenous peoples, definitely something that we will add to the lineup. Thank you so much, Pavel. Definitely looking forward to having you on September 4th as well. Anyone else would like to say something? Otherwise, oh, sorry, not otherwise, but anyone? Dalee.
Yeah, I just think that Benota's question is quite interesting, and whether or not we are in the trap of the geopolitical game. I mean, and it goes to what Elsa has said about strategic steps, and how do we take the strategic steps to ensure that we're not caught up in all of that language. And it isn't just geopolitical, but obviously the economics tied to the geopolitics. And we're acutely aware of these issues in the Arctic now that the whole rest of the world wants a piece of us and a piece of our territory and homelands, never mind the impacts of climate change. And I could go on well beyond 60 seconds, but I think that this is something that might be worth taking a look at in the framework that Elsa and others have introduced it, in terms of strategic objectives and the tactics to arrive at your objective. So thanks, everyone. This is just really, really fascinating.
Thank you so much, Dalee. Kenneth?
I want to follow up on what Dalee just said, and also what Benota asked. And I'm just curious about are we getting in the geopolitical trap? And that's a really good question. And yes, we are. I don't call it a trap though, but it certainly is that we seem to be a player in all of this international stuff, because if we weren't a player, there wouldn't be so much resistance. You know, the fact that some states are resisting our rights and stuff like that means that we are a threat and therefore a player, and so we have weight such as it is. And all we have to do is, as Elsa said, we have to be strategic about how we use that weight and how we expand that weight in a positive way. But it's a really good, interesting, I guess, something to think about deeply about our role in geopolitics. And in closing, though, I want to say that I'm happy to see so many familiar faces on this call, and that I just want to. I know that I was pretty negative a little bit at the beginning, but I want to encourage everybody that we're all in this struggle together, and as long as we keep on struggling is how we make gains. And then so we have to continue those struggles to keep these gains going on into the future. And I'm looking forward to those that will replace us in the future to continue this struggle and continue to making gains at the international level. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Kenneth. Carson.
Quick one. Thank you, Ghazali. Once again, I am privileged to be in this call with all of you. I feel like a toddler in the whole movement that I'm building. So as a young person, right from the start, I knew that I wanted to serve the people, to serve our Indigenous Peoples movement. And even from in my own community, I come from the Endorois, and when I was a young person, I saw my elders take the fight for our land right, and we won a case, but just that. And so I've seen that, and I've seen the loss of energy and sense of urge to fight and all that. But this is very important. So right from the start, since when I was born, I have always wanted to serve in the Indigenous Peoples movement. And the first tool has always been to build the capacity, because we all agree that you cannot give what you don't have. So that is my closing remark. Let's always read widely and build yourself. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Carson. Tuomas?
Thank you. And I think I will not try to repeat myself or try to sum up what I have been already talking, but I want to use my minute tackling the question of what Pinotta said and also about the geopolitical game. I think Kenneth said really well. The Indigenous movement really is a player. And we have done a lot of strategical efforts that have paid results. And that is also what Kenneth was saying earlier, that these some of the challenging countries that have not been so supportive for Indigenous peoples are feeling pressure to coordinate among themselves. Countries like Russia, China, India, that are in the geopolitical game, the biggest and the big players even in the Security Council. So we are a player, and I think it's really important to remember and use the Kenneth's wise words in the future a couple of times more.
Thank you so much, Tuomas. I see nobody else that was like, thank you so much. Oh, sorry, Elsa, of course. Thank you so much, Elsa.
Just two quick comments as final points. That regarding corporations, I think the Indigenous Peoples movement has unused capital, and there is a lot that can be done, not just through the UN on this, strategically together though. One comment, and the other, it builds on what Aili said sometime at the beginning of this discussion, and also Kenneth. It's a broad comment, that the Indigenous peoples have to continue creating ideology. I will use this word because it's not just, it's the moral high ground that Kenneth talks about, but also other items, other things. You call them geopolitics, you can call them decolonization, whatever we can call them. So Indigenous peoples have to continue building that, creating this ideology. This is very important because this ideology creates a fertile ground internationally for their issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elsa. So if not, then I'll give the floor back to Hoki.
Ha sido gratificante poder escuchar a cada uno de ustedes, aprender de sus experiencias, de las luchas, también de los anhelos y los sueños. Creo que, como bien comentaban, hay mucho que seguir dialogando, y todo el trabajo intergeneracional, también de los ancianos y ancianas de nuestras comunidades, para seguir compartiendo la sabiduría. Y creo que en medio de todo esto, algo que nos enriquece a todas y todo es la fuerza espiritual del canto, de la ceremonia, de los ritos de nuestros pueblos. Que eso sea parte también de nuestras formas de seguir trabajando en medio de estos temas de gobernanza y diplomacia en relación a los derechos de los pueblos indígenas. Pero queremos terminar agradeciendo, y voy a hacerlo en inglés para agradecer a cada uno de ustedes. I want to thank our guests for this roundtable episodes, the How to Indigenous Governance and Diplomacy for the Now webinar series. If you are watching this from Zoom or Facebook, we hope you have enjoyed it. We thank the interpreters for their amazing support, the guests for having shared their thoughts and time, and the partners in the special series, Tuomas Aslak, DOCIP, Rumbimit, TV Indígena, a mis hermanos Kunas en Panamá y Colombia, Nano Gambi, Gwenatkan. Thank you so much for this time. Ghazali.
Yeah, this the only thing that I have left to say is as well. I join Hoki in saying that thank you so much for the guests for sharing their thoughts, being very frank and being sharing so many wisdom and knowledge that I'm sure that people that are watching now or later on YouTube will definitely appreciate and find value in it. Thank you so much as well from my side. The next episode will be August 28th, so next week. To make it convenient for our African, Asia, and Pacific and Russian viewers as well, and guests, we will start at 6 p.m. Sydney time. So Binota, he was getting up very early. It's 4 a.m. right now in Canberra, I believe, when he asked that question. So next week he can just, it's a better time for him. So that will be 6 p.m. Sydney time, 10 a.m. in Geneva, and 4 a.m. in New York City and Ottawa, and 3 a.m. in Panama City. Hopefully, if you see, it's a very rich conversation. So hopefully you'll be able to join us tomorrow, next week as well. Please help us keep the conversation going on Twitter, #HowToIndigenous_Now, and you can tag me in your post at Gomaluku, and feel free to share any questions, screenshots, or feedback. Again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much, everyone, for watching, for participating. Tell your friends about this webinar, and we hope to see you on August 28th. Everyone, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Ghazali.
Thank you.